International. Now you be Baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. I dey hello, Noble People's International. Now you be Baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. Get Diamond, Noble Police and MC Cole. I dey hello. Yetunde Majek Okeshola ńkọ́ ṣá máa gbádùn ní tiẹ̀. Ayaba Esther George Òrékelẹ̀ wà tiwa. Mr. Ọ̀tún Àràbí ńkọ́ ṣá máa jó kọjọkọjọ. TKM Connection mo ń gbádùn ẹ jù. Báyọ̀ Adéyàgá MD and CEO Noble People's International. I dey hello ìtọ́lẹ̀. Noble People's International. Now you be Baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. I dey hello, Noble People's International. Now you be Baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. I dey hello, Prophetess Divine, presenter. J-Boy Adéyàgá, òkú iṣẹ́ ọpọlọ. Kiki Nana mi ńkọ́, ọmọ Adéyàgá. Iwani head of department.
Performance in Africa, which African football nations, or African nations rather, compete for this prestigious African tournament, which has been going on now for over 40 years. So we will be talking to a few sports analysts, or rather football analysts, who will be sharing with us their thoughts. Should this tournament move from January, which is normally held between January and February, and CAF are now calling that it should be moved to June and July. Well, across the community across the UK, I've spoken to quite a number of fanatic African football fans, and they are saying that moving it to June, July, we are only catering for the European League. So in short, are we doing this because most of our players are playing in prestigious European leagues? We're talking of the ever-watched English Premiership, the ever-watched La Liga, and the Bundesliga and Serie A in Italy. It's quite a debatable topic. It's a debatable subject, whether it is for the betterment of African football or it's us going a step backwards. And there's also another story that popped in, which is it's alleged that the Confederation of African Football also considering playing the Africa Cup of Nations outside Africa for marketing purposes. Well, that's all coming up on this evening's program. But to start off with, I'll start by giving you the football results of the Côte d'Ivoire Football League. Not to forget that the Côte d'Ivoire Football League is where the likes of the Yaya Toures, the Drogbas, the Gervinhos of Arsenal were once playing. And last week's results, that's the week ending the 31st of July 2017, ASEC Mimosas 1 and Wako 0. Stade d'Abidjan 2, Sporting Gagenia 0. Tanda 2, JCAT 0. Siwa Sport 1, WAC 3. Africa Sports 2, SOA 2. Mosul 1, Tunda 0. San Pedro 0. Stade Abidjan 0. ASEC 1, Abegengora 2. And FAD 3, Denguela 2. And on the top of the Côte d'Ivoire Premiership, ASEC Mimosas are on 45 points and WAC are on 44 points. Tunda are on 41 points and Africa Sports are on 40. So it's quite a very tight one there in Cote d'Ivoire. ASEC Mimosas on 44 points, WAC on 44 points, 1 point, adrift. So it's a bit of a tight one there between the two top teams in the Cote d'Ivoire League at present, and that's ASEC Mimosas on 45 points and WAC on 44 points. And of course, Tunda are also on 41 points and Africa Sports are on 40. So, of course, you can tell there that it's quite a tight one for all teams. I think ASEC Mimosas have got a lot of, they've got 3 teams breathing on their back with a lot of games still to play before the end of the season. And we look at the bottom 4 of the Cote d'Ivoire Football League. I beg your pardon, JCAT are on 13 points, and Denguela are on 25 points, and Sport Gagna are on 32 points, and Mossar on 32 points. So it looks like JSAT are in definite trouble in terms of relegation battle. They need to win all their next 4 matches just to stay at least in contention for survival. And in other news, in Ivory Coast, the president of the Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, says his country will not need to co-host the expanded Africa Cup of Nations final in 2021. Ivory Coast has the infrastructure, he says, but then he goes on to say that Ivory Coast were given the rights to host a 16 team, but it has now increased to 20. And the tournament, of course, as I mentioned, is being moved from January to February. Well, that's, of course, the football results and sports news, or rather football news coming in from Cote d'Ivoire. If you've got any thoughts or you'd like to contribute towards this evening's program, please feel free to call me on 07 415 063 960. I'll definitely say that again in case you didn't catch that. It's 07 415 063 960. Now let's move on to another league. We go on to Sudan, the Sudan Football League. Perhaps, of course, if you didn't know, just to share some information with you, this is the whole purpose of this program is to support and promote the local football leagues in Africa, and of course other sporting activities, boxing and tennis. A lot of us think that football is only played in Europe, but football is highly appreciated and played in Africa as well. Sudan, for example, before I mention the results, Sudan has got one of the highly paid clubs in Africa. It's among the top 4 or top 5 teams that pay players a lump sum of money. If you didn't know, a lot of African players are playing for top teams in Sudan, in the sense that the Sudan League is quite, or should I say, fairly well invested. Well, the results that happened over the weekend were Madini 3, Al Shota 3, Merika El Fasha 0, Italy Arab 1, Rabita Kosti 1, at Abara 2, Meriki Kosti 1, El Hali Atbara 0. And that's the results from the Sudanese Football League. Of course, you can check more results online after the program and probably research and see that there's a lot of development in that country in terms of football. But again, other questions that raise a lot of eyebrows is, the Sudan national team. Of course, they've always qualified for an Africa Cup of Nations. Their league is well invested. But then why is it that they can't qualify for a prestigious World Cup? Is it that, if your country plays good football or is well invested at club level, that doesn't give you a passport to play well at national level? I'll go back to look at where we are right now. The England national team, popularly known as the Three Lions, they've got one of the best leagues, the top two leagues in the world. But we've seen England struggle at major tournaments, the European Championship, and of course the World Cup. Well, let's move on to Sub-Saharan Africa. This week we look at Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Football League. Zimbabwe Football League was played between Saturday the 30th and Sunday the 31st of July 2017. Chipungu United 3, Black Lions 0. Chicken Inn 1, Bulawayo City 0. Dynamos 2, Triangle 1. Ngezi Platinum FC 4, Hungwe 1. Shabani 0, Highlanders 2. Batutu Rovers 0, Platinum Stars 1. Harare 3, Caps United 2. Sholotosho 1, Haumine 1. ZPC Kariba 0, and Yada 0. Caps United, of course, still playing in the African Champions League, or popularly known as the Confederation African Champions League. Caps United, a very, again, another team that's got players that are very, very well paid. Players getting as far as $5,000, $6,000 a month. That's good for African football. So African football is developing. The top 3 or 4 teams in most leagues are paying very good, very good money. I didn't know that even in Kenya there is a club called Jemaya FC, which is paying players close to $8,000 a month. So a lot of investment there in African football. So that is the Zimbabwean league that was played over the weekend. Still in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has removed an artificial pitch that was donated by FIFA in 2008 ahead of the 2010 World Cup. A lot of players complained about the hard pitch and said Lloyd Mutasa, who is the coach of the local side Dynamos, he said he prefers a natural turf, which is good for the players. Well, that's a FIFA, standard of putting an artificial pitch, and the coach of Dynamos says, well, it's not very suitable for players in Zimbabwe. They prefer a natural turf. I mean, it reminds me of this joke back home in Africa, where I was playing football. As we play football in the ghetto, you sometimes it's not like here in the UK where you get into JD Sports and get yourself a pair of boots for £8 or £12. Sometimes you have to play without shoes. So I remember there was this joke that certain players, give them a boot and you don't see the skill. The moment they take off their boot, that's when you see the skill. So that be the same story in Zimbabwe, that they're used to just natural turf, because footballers here in Europe playing from the age of 8 to 15 on these artificial pitches, which they call the Astro turf. Well, let's move into other news. In Nigeria, Nigerian captain John Abi Mikal is optimistic when it comes to Nigeria's hopes of qualifying for the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia, in which Nigeria are already 4 points clear of second place Cameroon and 5 ahead of Zambia and Algeria. And in Congo, the Leopards of Congo, the first country from sub-Saharan Africa to appear at a FIFA World Cup in Germany in 1974, say they are as well gearing up to qualify for the World Cup in Russia in 2019. Not to forget that Congo, at that time, they were once upon a time called Zaire under their late president Mobutu Sese Seko. They qualified for the World Cup in Germany in 1974, only to lose 9-0 to Yugoslavia. And it's alleged that at that time, president of Zaire, Mobutu Sese Seko, had given them a Mercedes-Benz each for qualifying for the World Cup. And it's alleged that when they came back, he took away the cars from them. What a development, or what a joke. Well, let's look at our final piece of news this evening. Zambia beat Mauritius 3-0 to be crowned under-17 champions at the COSAFA under-17 final that was played in Port Louis in Mauritius. Zambia emerged winners after beating Malawi and South Africa in the ongoing under-17 COSAFA tournament that ended last weekend. This is the first time Zambia is winning the COSAFA tournament at under-17 level. Well, we go with our topic this evening, which is is it right for CAF, Confederation African Football Federation, of course, who fall under the umbrella of FIFA, to move the Africa Cup of Nations from January to February to June and July. Not to forget that June and July in some parts of Africa, we're talking of sub-Saharan Africa that has hosted the tournament in previous years, like South Africa, it becomes very cold. So do you think that's fair for Africa to move to this direction? Should we now host the Africa Cup in June or July, or just leave it to January or February? What are your thoughts? Do you think yes or no? Give me a call now on 07 415 063 960 and let me know your thoughts and opinions. Some Africans here in the UK have been saying that yes, it is quite a very positive thing that we move it to June and July, because it's very difficult to get some of our players into the tournament, because some of the players are playing top flight football here in Europe. So now I'll take a quick break, and of course when I return, I'll be joined by my two guests, David Doherty of Nigeria and Nawa Siwonga of Zambia, to give us their thoughts and opinions and analysis on their thoughts, or rather the advantages and disadvantages of moving the Africa Cup of Nations tournament from January, February to June and July. Stay with us on the Sports Corner. I'm John Chinode, and I'll be right back after this.
You dig it, when I think of the future, you said you are a solid rock. Now you be papa, make we jolly, noble family. By your heart, I got make you jolly. Ah, wow, Noble People's International. Now you be baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. I did Noble People's International. Now you be baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. I did Congratulations to you, MC Ike Diamond, Noble Police and MC Cole. I did Yetunde Majek Location Lanko Shama Badoniti Ayapa Esther George Orekele Watiwa Mr. Otun Arabi Unko Shama Joko Joko Jo TKM Connection Mongbadun Eju Bayo Adeyaga MD and CEO Noble People's International. I did hello, it's Wally. Noble People's International. Now you be baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. I did hello, Noble People's International. Now you be baba, Noble Radio, Noble TV. I did hello, Prophetess Divine, presenter. J-Boy Adeyaga, Oku Ise Opolo, Kiki Nana Mingo, Omo Adeyaga. Ìwọ ni head of department ní ìlú Naija. Reverend David Miyunko MC Kivet wọ́n gbádùn ẹjù. Ìwọ ni presenter tó kọjú owó. Gbogbo ọmọ Naija pátápátá tí ń bẹ nílùú London. Ẹ kú iṣẹ́ ọpọlọ. Ẹ ṣé Noble People's International. Now you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV. I dey hello, Noble People's International. Now you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV. I dey hello, Online radio tó bójú owó. Noble People's ní kẹ́ máa lọ. Online TV tó dángájíá. Àwọn ní bàbá. Event paparazzi. Àní àwọn ní bàbá gbogbo wọn. Event coverage ńkọ́. Noble People's ní ká lọ. Ní Naija àti lókè òkun. Àwa yàtọ̀. Epi jolly, adé aga, we dey jolly, Bàbá adúpẹ́ o, bàbá adúpẹ́ o, bàbá adúpẹ́ o, bàbá adúpẹ́ o. Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello, Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello, IGDO, Akindayini, ṣètọ́jú Adéaga, aláṣẹ People's Magazine. Báyọ̀ oyè fẹ̀sọ̀ ńkọ́, mo ń gbádùn ẹ jù. Tọ́jú yèyé arẹwà, orékèlẹ́wà, tí ń jẹ́ Sunshine. Pásítọ̀ Lálẹ́rẹ̀ mi, ẹ kú iṣẹ́ Olúwa. Pẹ̀lú gbogbo ọmọ ìjọ CAC Mount Zion International UK, ẹ kú ìtọ́jú Adéaga. Bàbá mi pàtàkì, ọ̀rọ̀ ṣì ń bọ̀ tó bá dọ́jọ́ wájú. Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello, Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello, Primate E.T. Coca, mo ń gbádùn ẹ jù. Pẹ̀lú gbogbo ọmọ ìjọ Holy Pentecostal Church of Christ Aládùúrà ní Calford, London ló gbé ṣiṣẹ́ Ọlọ́run ọba. Ẹ bá mi tọ́jú Yétúndé má jẹ́ kòkè ṣọlá tí ń jẹ́ màmá òkìkí. Bàbá adúpẹ́ o, bàbá adúpẹ́ o, bàbá adúpẹ́ o lórí Adéaga. Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello, Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello, Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello, Noble People's International, na you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello,
Ayato, Noble People's International Magazine, unveiling Noble TV and Noble Radio worldwide.
Èrò ẹ wá wo ohun tí bàbá ṣe láyé ọmọ rẹ̀. Noble People's International, na you be bàbá wọn. Èròyà ẹ wá wo ohun tí bàbá.
Corner on Noble Radio, Noble TV. Well, it's now time to join our guest, Nawa Simongo, who is a sports broadcaster from sub-Saharan Africa. Now is very knowledgeable about African football. He's been watching it for 40 years and is right here on the line. Good evening, Nawa. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, and thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, fantastic, Nawa. I mean, of course, you've been watching the Africa Cup of Nations when I was still in my nappies.
Well, yeah, now you're giving away my age.
Well, you're not that old, but I'm just saying you've been watching it at least when I was in my nappies, and probably you were, should I say, in primary school at that time?
Yes, I've still been watching it, and I will continue watching it until probably until when we can't watch it no more.
All right, fantastic. Well, now the Confederation of African Football have been obviously talking about moving. It's not yet accurately reported that they'll move it from January, February to June, July. Do you think this is a good move from the governing body of African football?
I'll tell you what, this is exactly what I think. we can understand why they're trying to do it is to suit in with the leagues in Europe and the South Americas. But the question I would ask myself is, who does it really benefit? Because if you think about it, how many African players play in the European leagues as compared to the African players that play in the African leagues? The numbers in Africa are more. And who does it benefit exactly? Does it benefit us as Africans, or does it benefit the few players and the leagues that are already big, already get the bigger sponsorships? When will we make ourselves big as Africa to have our own tournament where we get people that really fully sponsor us as a difference? Because remember, if we're playing in June, July and everything, we would then be competing against the other bigger competitions, i.e. European Cup and things like that. So will we get the same amount of sponsorship? For me, I think it's a wrong move if they go that way, but I can understand what they're trying to do is to suit in and from the pressures of the other bigger governing bodies, but it suits them, not us per se.
Right. Okay. I mean, before I touch on something else, I'm trying to look at the weather in Africa. I mean, you from Southern Africa, where as we talk right now, okay, we're getting to August, but July and June are one of the coldest months in Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Namibia. So if tomorrow we had to host the tournament in Zimbabwe or Namibia or South Africa or Malawi or Zambia or Tanzania, any of those countries close to the sub-Saharan Africa, and it's going to be cold, do you think that is good? Can players play under those kind of conditions? I mean, I know when you're playing football, you feel warm, but what about the fans? Do you think it's a good move? Because all tournaments in the world are played in the summer when it's lovely and hot.
Yeah, but don't forget, bear in mind, our league in Africa, in all those areas that you speak about, is very, very active during that particular time. So our league is active during that time. So we just, people go and watch the football anyway. We're active during that period. So I don't think it will make a difference if we have the tournament round about that time is in terms of the weather. But I just think it's, it will be cold, but then, these days with the global warming, people say it's warm in the afternoon and cold at night. So, that's just one aspect of it. But then I still think, it wouldn't be that bad. It wouldn't, if they went that way, it wouldn't be that bad. But I don't think it's the weather should be any factor that we should look at.
Right, and how do you look at the Confederation African Football? Of course, we've had a lot of changes with the top committee that ruled forever. Do you think now CAF are making independent decisions? I mean, they obviously have to be answerable to FIFA. But do you think the CAF that we've got right now in place are making independent decisions without interference from outside?
That's a very good question, but we have to look at it in one way. As we speak at the moment, the new CAF sort of committee or the new executive of CAF is pretty new at the moment. I still think they're still finding their feet, and whichever way we look at it, and we have to be honest with ourselves. FIFA is still the world governing body. They still have a footprint on all the other football bodies, so they still will have a major influence. What we need to protect ourselves from is influence of other regional bodies, like, say, for instance, UEFA and the Asian League and that sort of things. We need to be able to create ourselves, a mother body. CAF needs to be a mother body for Africa and represent us fully, and want to seek to represent us in the best way that represents Africa, and not the interests of other bodies, so that we can say, i.e., sort of like suit our player or our tournaments to fit in with the Premier League or La Liga, or Serie A or something like that. We need to be able to protect our league, because remember, the crop of our players comes from our league. They're the ones that we need to be able to groom, and then they come in, and then you have but let's say, for instance, if we look at the numbers, let's say on a wild number, maybe in Europe or whatever across the world, we probably have a maximum of 1,000+ players.
Yep.
Then the rest comes from the whole crop comes from Africa. The new crop comes from Africa. Until we start to promote our leagues, until we start to take a greater interest in our league, we won't be able to create those world-class players, i.e. the George Weahs, the Drogbas, and things like that. You know, the Essieans and the Kalusha Wales and everybody like that. Until we promote our own, those players won't come to the fore, and then we've got to be able to protect them by making sure that first and foremost our interest is in our sort of region, in the CAF region.
Right, okay, no, I mean, you've mentioned something there. I was being very attentive to what you're saying, especially when you mentioned improvement. What do you think, in your opinion, that the Confederation of African Football can do to improve and contribute to our local leagues and the African Nations Cup as well as a tournament?
Yeah, the local leagues need to be promoted.
How can they be promoted? I mean, what sort of methods should they use to promote?
You see, the thing I tend to look at the way before the Premiership was set up. You know, the EPL was set up even before Serie A and the La Liga and everything. They were all under what we call the Football Association, the FA, and everything like that. Until they created an association that sort of promoted that, brought in sort of good rules that run the particular thing. We've got models around the world. Why can't we look at those particular models that are around the world and create something that benefits us, and create a model that is beneficial to us, that improves us as a league? Because the main thing that we have now is that everybody wants to watch the Premier League. Everybody wants to watch La Liga. Even the people at home, they promote that on the TV. You watch more of the international games than the local games. The children on the streets will tell you, if you ask 1, 2, 3, 4, which team do you support? You will have people tell you Man United, or Barcelona, Real Madrid, Roma, Juventus, and things like that. They don't mention their local leagues first. So there's something that we've got to look at. The local league your homegrown, your neighborhood thing must be the team that you follow first. But how do we do it? What are the pitfalls that those particular leagues have, or those particular teams have? Until we iron out those, we will always have that, because that is the cream. It seems to be these other particular leagues that have got all these great players, so-called great players, world-class players, and things like that. So we've got to find an avenue that makes our league attractive to the people.
Yeah, well, if I look back in your native country, Zambia, before Zambia lost 30 players in that horrific plane crash in Libreville in Gabon. The Zambian league, I'm told, was well watched. You had stadiums filling up. But I'm told now that if you look at the Zambian league, the Zimbabwean league, which used to fill up stadiums in sub-Saharan Africa, but today we are told that it's like you're watching a team in the park, but these are two Premiership teams. So what do you think has gone wrong from the past? Because in the past, of course, you're talking of the 80s, the early 90s. Countries like Zambia, countries like Zambia and Malawi were filling up stadiums. What do you think has gone wrong?
Okay, first and foremost, you have to look at one thing. The economies are not as good as they used to be. We don't have many people in terms of people. It's a choice now whether do I pay to watch a football game, or do I, feed my family, or things like that. That's an aspect that has come in as well. Two, you've got to look at the way that I'll give an example of the Premiership. The Premiership came into places like Africa, or specifically I'll look at Zambia as per se. They offered them onto television. And then just as the events happened, we had a boom in television, where we now had a lot of other, free and independent radio television stations
Yeah, go on. Hello?
Hello, yeah, still here. That beam these things on television, and they beam them freely to those particular people. And then you look at the stadia. The stadia is like it's immaculate. The grass is nice and green when they look on the TV. It's all brilliant. You can sit in a pub, relax, or you can sit in your home and watch it. Whereas when you go into the local stadia and then you see that the stadia there is somehow the grass is patchy and everything like that. The services, they don't have all those kind of amenities that go with what would attract people to come to the stadia. Then we started to see a drop in people watching the local leagues. Then we started to see more people watching the say for instance EPL, La Liga, and things like that. Now the way that has transpired also is that the younger ones that have been born now, which we call the digital age of the young ones, they're not interested in who the player is unless you have an exceptional player. They're only interested in the national team when the national team goes to a tournament or something like that. Even that doesn't really, galvanize people to watch it. So what we need to do is find ways that attract the local people. Do we take the league to the schools? Do we take the league, do we take the players that play in our local leagues to the schools so that the students get to know them, the pupils, do we take them to the local community? I mean, La Liga did that. La Liga did that. People were talking, the local players were talking to people in the local community. They were talking to people in schools and everything until it started to grow and people started to associate and, affiliate themselves to the local team.
All right.
I mean, I for one would say to you, I grew up knowing and watching my local team, which was City of Lusaka. That was the team that I knew. But I knew of Arsenal. I knew of then it used to be a Stoke and Blackpool, and West Bromwich Albion and that sort of thing. But then my heart was with the local team because I knew the local player. If I saw the local player, I knew who he was. He would stop it. That sort of thing. But now it's a different story. The children know Ronaldo, they know Messi, they know Rooney, they know whoever's in that league. But they walk past their actual local star and things like that.
So, I mean, you're saying your heart was with City of Lusaka at that time. Has that changed now? Are you now more of supporting maybe Arsenal, or are you supporting City of Lusaka more than Arsenal?
My blood is City of Lusaka.
I like to hear that.
Every time I hear of City of Lusaka playing, I'm always checking through the internet to find out what the score was. Unfortunately, today we lost 1-3 to some I think it was Zanaco or Zitnab or whatever. We lost 3-1 today. So that's for me. I'm always looking to hear with City of Lusaka. I want to know who the players are. I want to know who's doing well and everything like that. I still have that passion for that. But doesn't stop me from, my first love is City of Lusaka, then comes Arsenal, and then, but my first love has always been City of Lusaka.
Right, okay, before we wrap up, there's another one from Confederation of African Football, where it is again alleged that they are thinking, or I don't know if it's gone through, but the marketing department of CAF are thinking of the Africa Cup of Nations football tournament being played outside Africa for marketing purposes. What's your thoughts on that?
It's a nonsense.
Why do you say it's a nonsense?
Why take Africa out of Africa?
Well, they say, for marketing purposes, players can get recognized, sign into the bigger leagues, and they'll get more money from corporate organizations if the tournament is played in countries like China or here in the United Kingdom or other developed nations.
You can still get the same marketing, you can still get the corporate sponsorship and everything like that if your house is in order. The tournament itself just has to be organized properly. You don't have to it's a nonsense. Imagine the European Cup being played in Africa or the European Cup being played in China.
Right, okay.
Or let's say, for instance,
yeah, go ahead.
Or say, for instance, you play the Copa de Americas in Spain.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense at all.
Right. Okay. Let's look at both sides of things. Okay. If the tournament went ahead and it was played outside Africa, where do you think that would leave African football and the soccer fans? How do you think the fans will react in the whole of the continent?
That would be the beginning of the end of football in Africa.
Why do you say so?
Because if you take away the football from the actual fans, if you take the football away from the actual fans, you see, the fans are the ones that actually feed the football. If nobody's watching the local games, that's why our standards has dropped immensely, because very few people are watching the local games. Now, if you take away the national tournaments as well, how many people are going to remain watching it? What will be the point of us watching any of the football? Because now all we're doing is watching it on TV. We can't go and watch it live. We can't go and participate. The ones that can watch it are those that are extremely wealthy, you know. And then what happens to the masses? What happens to your support base? The support base will dwindle, and then once the support base dwindles, it disappears completely. So we've got to protect that situation whereby we do not allow for our tournament to be taken. Look, sponsors can travel anywhere. Sponsors have the money, you know. TV is universal. You can beam TV from one end of the world and beam to the other end. But let the indigenous people, the indigenous Africans, also be part of that success story that Africa needs to have. Without that, you don't have a base for your football to grow.
All right, okay. Just, of course, finally now, it's been outstanding indeed having you on the program. But just your final thoughts to those that are listening all over the world. Tell us what you think we should do to be proud of African football. You've mentioned that you are outstandingly proud of being a city of Lusaka FC in your country of origin, Zambia. Now, tell the viewers and listeners out there, what should we do? What can be done? We want to hear your final thoughts on how we can improve, how we can instill this in our hearts to believe and promote the local African football and, of course, other sports activities in Africa.
First and foremost thing is know your local team. Know the team that is local to you. Secondly, support your local team, not necessarily the one that is nearer to you or the one, but know your local teams. Know the teams that play in your local league. Get an interest. Find out who's playing where. Even if it's the school teams that are around you, get to know who's playing. Get some interest in your local thing. As we say sometimes, you know, local is better. Or as there's a saying that people say, local is lacquer, which is something like that. Get to know the local team. Know your local team. Venture out there. Use it as a pastime for yourself. Use it as a recreational part for yourself, just to know who your local team is. Get to watch them. That's not to say we stop you from watching your favorite team, but once you get to know your local team, you develop a sort of an affinity to that particular team. You start to support that particular team. Then you build a bond with that particular team, and then you get to know what it is about it, and those that can participate. If you feel that you have an interest, participate. Join the team. If you're good at coaching, do a bit of coaching maybe for the youth team. If you're good at administration, try and get into the administration of the team. But build your local base, build your local team, and support your local team. Your first port of call should be your local team.
Right, okay. Now, Sibongo, you've been outstanding on the Sports Corner this evening. I will definitely call you again and hear your thoughts on other developing news coming out of African football. Thank you so much, and you have an outstanding evening. The weather not so good today, so keep warm.
Thank you very much for having me, and God bless. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that was Anawa Sibongo, a football analyst, telling us his thoughts and opinions on the recent announcement by the Confederation of African Football that their intentions now are to move the Africa Cup of Nations from January, February to June, July. I'm going to take a quick break, of course, and when we come back, we'll talk to another football coach He is somebody behind the Nigerian under-17 here in the UK. You know, they say that sometimes to be an entrepreneur is you need to create a solution to where you see a problem. And this gentleman saw a problem that the only way we can feed into African football from developed countries is by setting up an under-17 and under-15 here in the United Kingdom. I won't mention his name because he'll be joining us right after this. Stay with us.
Tọ́jú yèyé arẹwà orékè lẹ́wà tí ń jẹ́ sunshine. Pásítọ̀ Lálẹ́rẹ̀ mi ẹ kú iṣẹ́ Olúwa pẹ̀lú gbogbo ọmọ ìjọ CAC Mount Zion International UK. Ẹ kú ìtọ́jú Adéyàgá bàbá mi pàtàkì ọ̀rọ̀ ṣì ń bọ̀ tó bá dọ́jọ́ wájú. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Primate E.T. Ìkókà ń gbádùn ẹ̀jú pẹ̀lú gbogbo ọmọ ìjọ Holy Pentecostal Church of Christ Aládùúrà ní Calford, London ló gbé ṣiṣẹ́ Ọlọ́run ọba. Ẹ bá mi tọ́jú Yétúndé má jẹ́ kòkè Ṣọlá tí ń jẹ́ màmá òkìkí. Bàbá àdúpẹ́ o, bàbá àdúpẹ́ o, bàbá àdúpẹ́ o lórí Adéyàgá. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello.
Ayato, Noble Peoples International Magazine, unveiling Noble TV and Noble Radio worldwide.
Èrò ẹ wá wo tí bàbá ṣe láyé ọmọ rẹ̀. Noble Peoples International na yóò bí bàbá wọn. Lóyà ẹ wá wo tí bàbá ṣe láyé ọmọ rẹ̀. Noble Peoples International, I dey hello. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. When I think of the past, na you be baba. When I think of the present, you dey gidigba. When I think of the future, you said you are my solid rock. Now you be papa, make we jolly. Noble family, buy your Adéyàgá, make you jolly.
Now wow,
Noble Peoples International, now you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Noble Peoples International, now you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV, I dey hello. Congratulations to you, MC Ike Diamond, Noble Police and MC Cole, I dey hello. Yétúndé má jẹ́ kòkè Ṣọlá ńkọ́ ṣá máa gbádùn ní tiẹ̀. Ayapa Esther George òrékelẹ́wà tiwa. Mr. Ọ̀tún ara mi ńkọ́ ṣá máa jó kọjọkọjọ. TKM Connection mo ń gbádùn ẹ jù. Báyọ̀ Adéyàgá MD and CEO Noble Peoples International, I dey hello. It's Wale. Noble Peoples International na you be baba. Noble Radio, Noble
TV. Well, our topic this evening is we are looking at FIFA's intentions of moving the Africa Cup of Nations from January to February to June and July. Mixed reactions, of course, from different sectors of the African football fraternity and, of course, those who are friends of African football. And that's why joining me now is David Doherty, the founder and the main coordinator of the Nigeria Under-17, who he himself calls the Super Eaglets, not the Super Eagles. David is on the line. Good evening, David. How are you today?
Not bad, evening.
Fantastic. Well, David, let's just get into it. The Confederation of African Football, they're under a new committee, new chairman, and one of the first things they've showed us so far is they are intending to move the Africa Cup of Nations, which you and I have been watching in January and February, every 2 years to June and July. Do you think there are any advantages or disadvantages with that?
In some quarters, to many, some are saying it's a good idea. The question is the CAF dancing to the tune of the European federations in terms of the UEFA and all the Premier League teams and everything? Because if you're moving the CAF from January and February to June and July, that shows by the time the season is on break, when people are going on pre-season and players are going on pre-season, some of the players that participated as African players would then again, probably if they have maybe 1 week or 2 weeks off from their club, would again be rushing back to resume pre-season with their club side. So I think from that angle with players, I think that might be a bit difficult and be too much hectic for them. To jump into play after the CAF Conference tournament, the AFCON. But in other hands, if you look at it, I think the Europeans will be very much happy. It will be a welcome, and even the clubs and the European clubs, a welcome news for them, because this will allow most of their African players to stay in the club and play along as the league goes on. If you remember, most of them are not kind of happy when the players are leaving for Nations Cup. It leaves a lot of gaps. But according to the Nigerian, the Nigerian president for NFF, he said this will actually bring a lot of advantage to African players in terms of market. For the players, they can be sold and they can go a long line with the when the window opens, players can actually be bidded for in good amounts in line with their European counterparts. A lot of benefits as well, but at the same time, the question is, would that work very well with the players?
Oh, all right. I mean, you mentioned during your opening that are we dancing to the European tune? Why do you think, or why do you say that? Is this dancing to the European tune? What do you mean by that?
Because if you look at it, it's always been a problem for most of the European leagues, and say for example the EPL, the Premier League teams. There's always been complaints when players are leaving for the AFCONs. At times, some of the clubs tends to ensure that the players probably give some excuses just because they don't want them to go for African Nations Cup. So that's what made me said maybe CAF is dancing to the tune of the European leagues and around the world, or UEFA, or any one of them. So because if you look at it, it's to the benefit of the European side. And the question is, are we dancing to their tune? Yes, it seems we are dancing to their tune, because if it's been moved to June and July, again, July and July in Africa is when it's raining season. But the advantage there, if you look at where I was reading on some of the reasons why the benefits that CAF thought would be, and they were saying the Nations Cup might not be hosted only in Africa. This time around, it could be moved to other countries.
Exactly, and I was coming to ask you that question. Tell us why. Do you think that as well has advantages or disadvantages?
Yeah, it has advantage, and it has a lot of disadvantage. This should mainly be an African organized event, and it should be organized in Africa to bring in income, to bring in so many things into Africa, rather than trying to move it around. That's what I'm trying to say. Trying to bring a new idea, you're complicating the issues. Bringing it to Europe, well, is okay, but you might be opening the doors for players in terms of that, in terms of market. But Europeans still come down to Africa to watch it. That's where the dignity is. That's where the pride is. That's why it's called African Nations Cup. It should be hosted on the soil of Africa. It shouldn't be hosted outside African continent. It shouldn't. The case is why they're doing that is because June and July, looking at the weather, is when it's most times raining season in that part of African countries. So coming to June and July is summertime in Europe. So now they're saying they might be probably looking at hosting it and then allowing European countries, to participate in African. It's been mixed up. He's not carrying the weight of what is used to be the idea of why it's called African Nations Cup. So I don't think it's really going. It's really going to speak well with all this injection and all this thing that they're trying to put. But in terms of the team, expanding the team, well, it's absolutely welcome. Great initiative, bringing more people, bringing more countries to participate. But they should leave it and let it be something that is hosted in Africa by Africans, and that's where the real privilege, the real benefit is. And then bringing people to come in, tourists, people who come, fans to watch, and it brings in more revenue into the country.
All right. I was going to touch on, the Nigerian league is ongoing, isn't it? Between June and July, isn't it? The local league.
Yes.
So, if we started hosting the tournament in June, July, that would affect the local league. What's your thoughts on that? Would it affect, teams? You're looking at Enugu Rangers, for example. Maybe they've produced 4 of their best players in the Nigerian team. What would happen to most leagues in Africa that between June and July are playing perhaps their return league matches? Do you think that as well will affect our leagues in terms of moving the tournament from January, February now to June, July?
Absolutely, it does. Because if you look at it, the Chan African Cup, African Nations Cup, is the players are in camp already. When you're talking of the Nigerian players, and if you're now moving the AFCON proper to that time again, I don't understand how that will work, because I'm not saying it's not going to work, but the thing is, they should look at the advantage. They should look at more of the advantage to the side of the Africans, to the side of the African countries that are participating in it, because that's the whole idea of the Nations Cup. Why are we dancing to the tune of the rope? Because now everything they're doing now seems to boil down to the advantage of the European. It's so simple. It's so clear. The question is the FIFA president having more power on CAF as a body? I don't understand. Because if they are moving it there because of that, they can move the Nations Cup down to June and away from what it used to be, and then now inconveniencing the players. I'm telling you, it's going to be a big problem for the players. Now the preseason is the period. June, July is when preseason is. That's when the league is off here. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
June, July is when. So you're dancing to the European tune. So you're not considering your own league. You're not considering your own people. So it's a big question, and it should be raised. People should be talking about this.
Okay, and in terms of before I move on to the next part of the our interview, Confederation of African Football, of course, they had a long-standing president for I don't know how many years. But then they've got a new president now, fresh committee. What would you like to see them, in your opinion, improve on in terms of the local African league?
I think it's clear. We all know what we need. It's all about having proper grassroots plan and development, welfare, very, very important of African players. What is going on? What is it? What are they doing in terms of capacity building program?
What would you like them to do?
Come again?
I said, what would you like them to do? What would you like them
That's what I'm trying to say. They should look at the areas of grassroots development. in Africa, which is very, very important, very, very paramount. What is going on? What are they doing? What are the youth league doing in every African countries? What is going on in terms of youth development? What is going on in terms of players' welfare? Even the welfare system of players. And welfare is very, very big when you're talking of welfare. You look at health structure, how the medical team, all these things have been put to place. In terms of the league itself, the qualities should be something they need to pump in more money in terms of funding, and which is very, very important. And then the pitches. All these things are part of the things that allows players to excel, that allows young players to excel. A lot of work for them to do, and I believe with the new the new president in place, and then with the young athlete people around him, I think they should be able to bring in something something more innovative, new things coming in. What is happening in sports? What is happening around football? What can we do to improve our league in Africa? A lot of questions still on ground, but I believe they've started well, but there's a lot of questions around the CAF AFCON tournament. A lot of questions around it. They should better think very well and look at the advantage to the African countries than looking at the disadvantage the disadvantage.
Right, fantastic. Okay, enough of CAF. Let's give them a break and let's look at Nigeria. John Abimikau says he's very optimistic when it comes to Nigeria's hopes of qualifying for the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. And Nigeria are already 4 points clear of second place Cameroon and 5 ahead of Zambia and Algeria. David, we've seen Nigeria qualify for the World Cup since I was without a pair of shoes in Africa. I've watched Nigeria with the likes of Rashid Yekini, the likes of George Finidi. Now, Job Amimikau says, yes, we are optimistic for reaching the 2018 World Cup. What do you think Nigeria can do now to excel in that tournament? Because they are not visitors anymore in the World Cup.
The question is, every Nigerian will tell you we are optimistic, we are patriotic, we believe the Super Eagles are able to do the work. They've done it in the past. But the question is, to the players and to the body itself, in terms of the Nigerian Football Federation, the plans on ground, what is going on in terms of the selection. There's a lot that has been happening between the technical committee and the coach himself. A lot of things has been going on, a lot of rows about player selection, how players have been invited, what is going on, a lot of corruption stuff that has been coming up from different quarters in terms of news reports. But the question is, are we in that good position at this time to play against the indomitable Lions of Cameroon? The answer is, as it is now, we should be looking at second when it comes to playing both teams together, because Cameroon has the upper hand. They are the African champion. We are doing very well. We're playing very well. Aside from the loss to South Africa, which was the most woeful performance from the Super Eagles. No side of the pitch that were far better than South Africa. But as it is, a lot needs to be put together for us to play and have a victory against these Cameroonians, because they're coming into that game with full confidence as African champions, and they are not ready to take anything for granted. And at the same time with the Super Eagles. So a lot of our players needs to work very hard if they want to retain the same glory like those that you mentioned, the Yekinis, the Amokachis. Then you can see the fire, you can see the passion, how much they wanted it. These young players can, and they can do the job. But the question is, are we physically prepared to meet and challenge the Cameroonian side with their physical presence? But in terms of any other areas, I think we're very, very capable, and we're good, and we should be able to work our way around it and to qualify for the World Cup and the AFCON proper.
All right, another one, David. You just mentioned something there of selection of players. There are a lot of African players from different African countries that I've spoken to here in the UK who are visiting, and I'm talking from West Africa, including North Africa, East Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. And I won't mention their names because they have to put food on their table. But they've said to me that in order for them to be selected, even in the local leagues, for example, if a player is getting an equivalent of $5,000 a month in Africa, he has to give $1,000 to his coach in order for him to get a team selection, and that applies at national team level. What do you think can be done to stop that? Because it's a very, very unfair process, that if you don't pay, will play somebody who is probably below average, and what suffers is the club and the country. What do you think, in your opinion, can be done by the authorities to put a stop to that?
I think what we can do is to curb it. Is like you saying you want to stop corruption in any part of the world. There is corruption. But it might be at a minimal level compared to some countries. But in the case of Africa, because now our focus and also our discussion is on an African country. Really, the problem of corruption is very, very big. The players, the people that mentioned that to you, absolutely, they are absolutely right. They are spot on. And the problem is not just about the players paying the money. The problem is even much more, even deeper than what we thought. You have the agents as well. The agents are the instruments as well. You can't blame them as an agent, because if you can't blame them. Everyone wants his or her player to play in the national team, and if they can get a national team call-up, then their price and their stake goes up. Clubs are looking for them, seeing them playing for their national team. So it's a big problem. It's something that is rooted in the system everywhere. You might see people at the top, hiding the seat. They don't know anything about it. Everyone, most of them do know about these things. But the thing is, they're highly involved in it. But so no matter how we try to reduce it, we can curb it, but we can't stop it, because this thing is still going to be happening. It happens in Europe as well. It happens everywhere. You might not see it, but it does happen.
So are you trying to tell me Wayne Rooney has given Alex Ferguson a bit of quid in the past?
And it might not be the likes of Rooney, but I'm definitely going to tell you that it does happen. The example I will give you is just about Manchester United. If you remember a player that was bought from Porto for 12 million by Alex Ferguson, a player that he has never seen played. He hasn't seen him played because of his assistant that is a Portuguese. If you remember, then I forgot. I'm trying to pick up the name of the player, and he couldn't. But it was a flop. He's one of the flop then for Manchester United. He was quickly sold back. I don't know where they sell him. I don't know where they put him. And he was bought for £12 million. So these are the things you see. Agents can do anything. They can do anything to get their players into anything. And it's a big problem. It's really a big problem. It's something we spoke about on our platform as well. And we're still going to be speaking about it. We're still going to be talking about it. It's a big problem. And I think we all have to come together and put our heads together, because it's actually ruining football. Because you're not going to be having players being called based on merits into the national team. Only if you know somebody or you have somebody that has the cash.
Right, okay. Finally, we can't just let you go without finding out your very positive development of forming a Nigeria under-17 here, who you call the Super Young Eaglets. Not the Super Eagles, but the Super Young Eaglets. What have you achieved so far? What is the latest? The last time we spoke, you were taking the team for a tour to play Birmingham City and other big teams, in the country, playing their, youth teams. Where are you at now with the Super Eaglets? Any positive developments happening?
Yes, we like you mentioned, we're working on various projects. We're looking at how we can, get most of these young people engaged, get them into the national team itself. And we are everything is going on well in terms of them looking at having a quota.
Yep.
Young diasporas, young Swahili Eaglets. They're not ours. They're all Nigerians. We are just here to be a pivot for them, to get them known, to put them out there for the national team, to see them week in, week out performing in their club side. So we're doing our bits, and we appreciate that they actually supporting us. So what we want is, can we take this much more further? And the case is the Golden Eaglets themselves, they are not even assembled yet in Nigeria. So one of the things that we're doing now is for 2018 is to take the team from UK, a team from the US, from our outlets in the US, and then from our outlet in Europe, bring them together to form a big squad, and then we take them again to Nigeria for the second time in a run, and hopefully one or two could still be, but definitely it's been on ground, it's been proposed. We're actually looking at having 3 or 4 in every national engagement that the Golden Eaglets of Nigeria are. So any of these players from the diaspora playing in different clubs across the globe, across Europe, UK, and America, have got a chance and an opportunity to get into the team. And you can see as well, we posted recently that the Nigerian Football Federation, for the first time now, opening doors for people to apply for coaching job in the national team on the 17th. And that's one thing we've not seen, in many years. And these are part of the things we've been talking about, putting forward, pushing. And you can see now a Nigerian descent coach from the UK with a UFB badge can as well apply and be considered. So it doesn't have to be you and picking a coach coming in, rotating coaches at taking the national team. It's not working. And at the same time, we're trying to do that to the players as well. Invite them in. They can do it. But there is a lot of work that we're doing. But as time goes on, we will be unveiling it. We're looking at, setting up academies in Nigeria. We're looking at 10 different academies in 10 different states. We're on it. We're pushing every other thing in there. So definitely at some point, all these things will take shape, and then we will be able, to sit back and be looking at all these young people flourish.
Right. There are some people obviously listening for the first time. Tell them who are the Golden Eaglets here in the UK, and tell them, of course, how they can register their sons as well. Just briefly tell them who are the Golden Young Eaglets.
The Eaglets is simply we're just a body. Team Nigeria UK and International is just a body that oversees young talent of Nigerian descent. But our work doesn't actually stay there. We have some kind of opportunity for those that are not even Nigerian. So they don't have to be Nigerian. We have other things that we do that falls under the new independent academy that we have in the UK that gives opportunity to players in local league that might be able to be scouted, that could be scouted by different club side in the UK or even in Europe. So we provide that platform as well for young people from the age of 7 to the age of 17 at that level. But at the same time, we work with the elite players in terms of those in the elite form. Not only that, we have a section of that we have a partner that we work with in terms of player representation, and they're called TNUK Sports NG. So if you have any player that is 16 up, 14, 15, 16 up to elite age that is looking for an opportunity here in the UK or across the world, you can also speak to them. TNUK Sport MG, they're on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they're everywhere. You can speak to them. They will be able to give you support and advice, and look at how they could support your player, brand them, manage them, and take them forward into the next level. But in terms of that, TNUK FC Academy is open to everybody, ages 7 to 17-year-old. You don't have to be Nigerian to be part of that. Just follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, TNUK FC Academy. So we're there to give you advice. But anything Nigeria UK is only for Nigerian and Nigerian descent across the globe.
Right, and people who want to get in touch with you, is there a telephone number, email, or website they can look at?
Absolutely. The website is www.teamnigeriauk.com, or if you're in the US, www.teamnigeriaus.com. Our base in the US is in New Jersey. We have a trial coming up in the US in the spring. Also, you can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Team Nigeria UK on Instagram, and on Twitter at Team_Nigeria UK. And then you can check us on what do I call it, on Periscope. We're everywhere. On Facebook, Team Nigeria UK, and we're there. And the phone number is there for everyone to see. It's 078 0744811213, and then they can email us at teamnigeriauk@groupmail.com.
Right, okay, David, it's been outstanding having you on the Sports Corner. You have a pleasant evening. The weather not in our favor, but I'm sure you know how to keep yourself warm.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chinode.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, yes, bye-bye. Bye.
Well, that was David Doherty from Team Nigeria UK. If you didn't catch his details and you'd like to register your little one, or your young man, or your young muffin, as you call them here in the UK. Young muffin, was your child made out of flour? No, he wasn't. Call him the young man. Catch David on Team Nigeria UK, but as David mentioned earlier, that it's not just for children of Nigerian descent. It's more of a football academy for those parents out there, not just African parents. It can be any kid from anywhere in the world. So as long as he's under 15, no age cheating. Remember, it's only under 15, under 17s that David is looking for. Well, we come to the end of another outstanding sports corner here on Noble Radio, on Noble TV. Make sure you tune in again next week at the same time. That is on a Wednesday between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. For another outstanding sports corner here on the platform that matters, Noble Radio, Noble TV. In particular, this program is there to promote African sports, football, boxing, tennis, anything that is coming from the continent of Africa and, of course, beyond. So you stay well. Remember, we always sit down in our back gardens, especially in the summer, with our Guinness and our potato salad, or them little toothpicks where you dip into the apple, you dip into the cheese, and you're there chewing and saying, we need to support our own African talents. But, well, supporting African talent is you contributing to this station, Noble TV and Noble Radio. And keep watching the rest of the programs that we've got lined up during the course of the week. Remember, you can catch us 24/7 right here on the YouTube channel, Noble TV, Noble Radio. And of course, if you'd like to advertise on Noble TV, Noble Radio, which has a viewership of over 100,000 people, feel free to contact us. The details are right in front of you. Feel free to contact us, and we'll be able to negotiate a very, very cost-effective deal for you. Don't forget, we've also got Noble Magazine as well, which is a global magazine that is now from nationwide, it's worldwide. Feel free as well to tell us your story in that magazine by looking at the telephone number, or look up the telephone number that's right in front of your screen, and feel free to tell us your story in Noble Magazine. Or furthermore, you can feel free as well to advertise on Noble People, Noble Radio. We mean good, not for me or the producers here, but Noble Radio, Noble TV is for you. So before I pull up the strings and pull out the plug, I'd like to again say thank you so much for watching. The weather here in the UK, not in our favor, but you know how to keep yourself warm. Goodbye.
Wow, sir.
Noble People's International. Now you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV. I hello. Noble People's International. Now you be Baba. Noble Radio, Noble TV. I hello. Congratulations to you, MC Ike Diamond. Noble Police and MC Cole. I hello.
Yetunde Majek Okeshola ńkọ́ ṣá máa gbádùn ní tiẹ̀. Ayapa Esther George Orekelewa tiwa. Mr. Ọ̀tún Àràbí ńkọ́ ṣá máa jó.